Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Wherever you call home, we are there. In favorite places, large spaces, for many homes we have coverage that fits the way you live. And with our home systems protection, you can cover major home appliances and more. We cover more type of homes than ever. Get the coverage you and your family deserves. For a free no obligation quote, visit us online or simply give us a call.
Down 5, 4. We're back at you in Gloves Off, and today I have a great guest, a former Navy officer who ran for Congress, and we're just going to touch base on what he thinks his issues and his experiences could bring in this new race that he's coming up for Congressional District 28. We got Commander Jay Furman. How are we doing today? You doing good?
Good, sir. It's an honor. Thanks for having me on. I'm ready for war with all of the hardware you get there behind you. So let's do it.
You take that side of the block, I'll take the other.
I've seen some bloody damage to those things. Those aren't to be trifled with.
Yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of good history, a lot of good artifacts that we brought, a lot of history from different parts of the world. And, there's three things that make the world go in connection. One is the war mentality, right? The martial aspects of it. The other one's cuisine, and the other one's music. And those three things, they're always interconnected one way or another. Either they bring peace after conflict. And I think right now we shouldn't be thinking about conflict, but we should be thinking about how we can rearrange our peace, because we've had a lot of conflict going on. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about you. Are you from Texas?
Yes, sir. I graduated in Austin, Texas, went to College Station for university. In between there, I had a stint with, I started with the Texas National Guard, continued with them through college. I had an irregular, non-standard college experience. Weekends, I was off flying, holidays, summers. And so that was kind of my way of doing things. I grew up all over, or traveling all over Texas. My South Texas roots just really begin with a fondness of hunting throughout South Texas, crossing over at far too young ages into Nuevo Laredo, crossing into the interior, riding the night bus and waking up in Semi Caliente or whatever silver mining, gym that we used to go to without fear or trepidation. It was just normal. Then I flew that Black Hawk that they trained me in the Texas Army National Guard. I flew the border. I flew drug missions, interagency, fire watch, you name it. That's kind of what that was my college experience, if you will, while homesteaded in College Station. I won't say a sorority house did not get buzzed every once in a while. I'm pretty sure that was somebody else. Definitely not me. But in all seriousness, I retired after all of that, going to school, as it were. I went off and decided to make military a career. Flew jets for the Navy. I flew the biggest, baddest jet there is. That's my stick. I'm going to stay with it. It can blow up the world. No jokes aside, it controlled and controls today the U.S. nuclear arsenal, and every pilot like myself, who is also a mission commander, controls that mission and is given line and responsibility by name in the Pentagon as the guy that they go to if they have to respond. God forbid a first launch from our nuclear adversaries, China, Russia, now North Korea. And so we did that. We bounced all over the world. My family and I loved it. Loved serving the nation. It was amazing. I've served in the far reaches of the heart of darkness, Africa, Joseph Conrad style, like the parade behind you, where borders didn't matter and people were just cannon fodder. Um, to places like Southeast Asia and sailed all over the Southeast Pacific and all of those island chains, really under the watch and watching Russia and China, North Korea. That's that area of responsibility of the world. I had a great couple of tours, Pentagon, learned DC to a degree that I would have never wanted to do if not having to live there and work amongst the military diplomatic crowd. That was my second half of the career. First half pilot, as described. Second half, I went and worked in the military diplomatic corps, if you will. I was a foreign area officer, and that's a guy or girl that goes and works with foreign militaries or foreign governments, helps our ambassadors with military liaison duties, and really tries to figure out where the overlap is in U.S. and other countries' interest, and we try to work those out, or we work in a mutual defense. And so I did that in all of those places as well, stints in Middle East. And so that's how I returned back to Texas, if you will. I came back, and at the very end, I guess I'm missing a chunk. Part of my reason I'm doing this, Paul, is I saw how corrupt we are. After operating inside the government for so long, it turned on me, and was vicious, and illegally so, unconstitutionally so. In 2001, everyone will remember the COVID vaccine issue, and with the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were forcing people to get the injections. It was not legal to do to anyone, and to the military as well, because it was not FDA approved. You can't force soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen to get experimental medicine, and it was still under the experimental category. It still is today. They did a whole shell game and made it confusing for everybody, and flipped in the word approved, and did a whole kind of circular media referencing scheme to really kind of just do a circus act in front of everybody, and follow the shell, which one is the peanut in, and to our great detriment as a nation. So I blew the whistle. We were in August of 2021. They made it mandatory for the U.S. Uniformed Services. To date, half of all the U.S. services military had decided not to take it. And that's across the reserve and the active spectrum. And so I wrote a paper, tried to get people to listen to my point of view, tried to posit it as a strategic, and no one wanted to listen. So the way I got back to Texas is after going viral with that, going on Tucker Carlson, trying to convince people that this is not something we want to commit our entire military force into, one experimental group, without knowing the outcomes. We have to have somebody drive the tanks, fly the airplanes, sail the ships to defend this country, to defend our borders. And so they were not listening, and no matter how loud it got, I was able to retire a day before they were going to prosecute me for not having the shot. So here I am on the good suggestion of a Bible study brother who suggests I need another fight soon, because I was disillusioned and quite upset, and there's lots to be upset with that situation. But I was determined to help with solutions and not just past. So I went down to our border and with a counter child sex trafficking group, we started trying to understand that intersection across the border and the intersections into the U.S. and really how to get after it. That turned into, how do I fix it? And in a short period of time. We were racing off of a national cliff pre-November with our economy and with all of the people that were coming in that we didn't know who they were. How many 9/11 bomber cells did we admit into this country? Our officials have no idea who, how many came in. Scariest thing possible. So, I ran at the problem, understanding that our U.S. Congress has dropped the ball, or our government, on checking the administration. Really, the Biden administration just kind of ran amok. They kicked down our back gate and just let everybody trample over it. At the same time, diluted our dollar. So yeah, so here I am. I signed up the last day you could to run for CD-28. I picked the biggest guy to knock down, the longest incumbent on the border, who I saw as part of the problem. And historically, we all know that Laredo sector and on south, off Frontera included, is some of the worst part of the border. Certainly, the most movement happens historically. People, not now, but drugs, money, guns. That sort of thing. We do have the crown jewel of ports in the United States, and that's the Port of Laredo, and that's being exploited and really not protected enough by the federal government, understanding how important that is to all of our diets, if you will. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm just still here running at the problem. It's not fixed yet. That racing off a cliff to pre-November is we have a pause. We pumped the brakes. President Trump caught the ball, but we've got to help him get over the end zone on kickoff. And we have about that much time to score. And so everybody that believes in borders and doing things the right way, in the rule of law, everybody that believes in no corruption, which is the thread between all of these things, everyone that believes in a better future for the kids than they had, to get into this moment. It's as if we're only halfway across the Potomac. We haven't crossed into it yet to bridge into the future that our forefathers intended and bequeathed us not so long ago, rather. But so that's me. South Texas is a natural fit. I retired to San Antonio because you say I got run out of Austin. It's not my town anymore. San Antonio, I've always had a very strong affinity for. We came here all the time, and so that we chose it, and we decided San Antonio is the line in the sand. San Antonio is where we're going to push back for the big cities in Texas. Now that's going to come from all of South Texas. Texas 28 is 76% Hispanic, which means to me that it's 76% God, family, first, right? And that's so important. And the most patriotic, area you can find. You can't, drive past the cemetery and not believe that everybody is the biggest American supporter possible. I love it. And this is a people that's been held down. We have been held down by the Democrat machine, by the LBJ Democrat machine, and that thumb is still on top of us with the elected leaders that have come up through the system still today. Henry Cuellar is the head of that snake right now. Others are fighting to grapple and to replace him as the head of that snake. But if you're born to the machine, it's what's the definition of insanity, Paul? Keep trying to do the same thing, expecting a different result. That we've tried that. We've been there. It has, our outcomes, and we were talking pre-call, talking about the Zetas and all of what's happened the last 20 years, but a complete upending of the region, and not for better. A few people are a lot better off. Most people are a lot worse off, in my opinion. So you've got human capital here that is so ready just to take off and launch, that have been held back, because just so a few people can fill their bowls and leave scraps for the rest of us, and we're all happy to get those scraps, which were funded by us. So I'm answering a call. We just kind of ran at this thing and said, and look at what happened. 5%. It's the closest ever. We closed the gap by 10%. I think Cassie Garcia hit it she came about 60% within, and that was a historic, result for Republicans. And now we're here. And this is despite, and I want to talk about this because it totally relates, and then I will just be quiet because I'd love to hear what you have to think on all these things I've raced through. Is that, I think we would have won, but for the cheating in Webb County. We had hundreds of people swear affidavits. I have them. We're protecting the names, of course, but we've submitted them to Congress that said my name didn't show up on the ballot. Go figure. So on the electronic display, they couldn't even vote for me. And we started getting calls about that first part of the early voting, saying, hey, what's going on? They called the TV station. TV station reported. People then called us, and we started investigating it. And it's true. And it's unfortunate. So for that reason, we did an election challenge. The election challenge was stopped by Webb County. We as part of that challenge, we challenged every ballot because we wanted to see what the problem was, head to toe, the full diagnostic, look under the hood. And as I'm personally copying these things, as their result, the county made us personally copy me, solo copy the ballots. I got through 25,000 of them, of the 66,000. And then they said, nope, you're done. And we got a court order from the Texas Court of Appeals, which is the second highest court in Texas, to resume that count. And they ignored it for 2 weeks, hired an Austin firm to then gerrymander that court order. So, it's dirty. And I know the environment that I'm working in, but it was shocking. I mean, the stories I could tell of that was a small little docu-series itself, from being physically assaulted to the tally box disappearing for 45 minutes in the middle of the invalidating thing. And oh, by the way, they only tallied in pencil. So the stories are infamous in South Texas, Box 13, Duke of Duval. I can tell you they haven't gone away. So let's quit rinsing and repeating with the same stuff over and over, folks, and let's do a complete up-in of from the top down. We got Trump in, now we got to keep working it down and moving this thing towards our values.
You said a lot of good things, and going back to the beginning, you said that you should go back and forth into Mexico. We're about the same age, and we used to cross into Mexico left and right. Right here we can go visit. My mom's side I have third cousins that are over there. We used to go visit them, just walk across anytime we wanted to. And when I moved back, because I moved back in 2000, I moved back, I'm an executive chef, and I moved back to open up a restaurant here. And of course, we've always taught the fighting arts of pugilism as that, right? The sweet science. And when I moved back into Laredo, that feeling was still there. And at that time, Laredo was the second fastest growing city in the nation, next to Las Vegas. And all of a sudden, it just died. And then we had the rise of a bunch of, paramilitary called the Zetas, starting about 2003. And, the funny part is one of my professors in Sabah, he was a brigadier commander of the French anti-terrorist police. His name was Robert Paturel. And he came down 2001. It was a year after 9/11. And we came down here to do a seminar because we're going to have the U.S. nationals. And we came down, and everybody, we did a meeting where they had some kind of like the heads of immigration. The head of the FBI was there, the police, and one of the directors kind of put that luncheon together for him, right? So we were all sitting down there, and he told me, I stopped an issue happening when there was this hostage takeover, because there were the anti-terrorist police in Marseille. And we had found plans through them, because they were going to bring down Montparnasse, which is the biggest building in Paris, or the tallest building in Paris, right? And they were going to bring it down. And he goes, and when we searched their residence, we found that they had plans to bring down the towers. And we gave it to our counterparts here. So they knew this was going to happen. And everybody there was just like with their mouth open. And he's telling them that they had already given the intelligence of our country this a couple of years before it It must be 2, 3 years before, and that kind of opened my eyes to everything that was going on. And then he turns around and he says, you know what, the drugs in Mexico is going to stop because the Mexican government has sent elite troops for us French to train, the Israelis to train, the Brits and the Germans, and they sent the team to Fort Bragg to train because there were going to be paramilitary group that was going to go in and stop all these drug dealers. Well, guess that paramilitary group became known as the Zetas. They came in there and they ended up being so. He was telling this, and then a couple of years later, you start hearing this paramilitary group. Helicopters came down the middle of the street. They killed everybody in the house, and so all of a sudden the stories come in. Then Laredo kind of goes down. So I blame the underworld for bringing down Laredo's growth here in South Texas.
And who let that weed grow?
Everybody, I think when you look at the contraband, you see a lot of, and nobody's ever kind of pointed it out, you see a lot of human trafficking above Laredo, northwest, and below Laredo.
Right.
But the county doesn't see that much of the mass immigration or mass migration or whatever you want to call it of them crossing the border. Yes, you do get it, but you don't see it as much as Eagle Pass or Del Rio or El Paso, or even lower into the valley. Laredo's kind of just dormant in that sense. I don't know, because there's probably too much other types of contraband going through that they don't want that to be looked at. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like octopus shooting ink in different directions, and that's my point on that. So I think Laredo is a place that has a lot of potential, but it has been stunned by certain parts of leadership. You mentioned COVID. I myself didn't take the jab, so I'm still 100% human DNA, almost safe. But during the pandemic, the city of Laredo was going crazy. It was nuts. You had the inspectors threatening small businesses, policemen threatening small businesses, threatening individuals. All that nonsense was occurring. The people that I'll give credit to for keeping Laredo alive was one, the county was the reason why it was kept alive. Both Raymond and King, and of course our senator, because they were bringing monies to. And I give credit to our congressman for bringing in money to small businesses towards the city. Now, what the city did with that money is a different story, because I have yet to know of a small business that have received money from that. So they did their job, but Laredo's it's a different world. And people don't understand that. So I'll give credit's due. They did bring in money to help out, but the city of Laredo itself was the one that was harming itself by its actions. I would say that. Now, you mentioned understanding our military counterparts, our mass immigrants that were allowed to cross over the border. There's a lot of talk about sleeper cells that we have, and it's unaccounted for. And I do believe that they're going to start waking up little by little. We already saw that the other day in New York when they killed two Israeli journalists, or what were they? They were at a prize, and one went in there and shot them. It's stuff like that.
Yep.
We're gonna see that type of actions throughout. Now, about the car, like it went from Texas, and now we have the underworld in Mexico. So it's devised by different factions, and each of these factions is known toward as cartels, right? I do see that the crossover of violence is already here. I see the crossover of violence is going to hit in every town. It's not just Laredo. You'll see it in the smaller towns, Cotula and Pleasanton and San Antonio, it's a bigger town. all the smaller towns in there, they have that in. And there's a study out there that they've made that a lot of these cartels are not recruiting Mexican nationals, they're actually recruiting American citizens. And so we have it's going to be a good one because to stop that. I agree with what our president is doing. I agree with that we need to tighten up the border, but we're still in that. I guess Laredo's still in that phase of it's not happening. It's that bubble that they live in.
Sure.
And they haven't seen the reality of it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only other outcome that I can tell. Or they're that naive about it because you have a lot of
kept it cleaned up off the border. I mean, there's nothing to see here is what the last administration wanted us to believe. They're shipping them north as fast as they could. So really a great smuggling operation, the best ever. And tragically, they can't account for 400,000 children. Can't account for them. It was like the centers that they would aggregate the unaccompanied minors. It was almost a shopping mall for people to come take a kid. You didn't really have any contact with them. You just said that you're their Tigo or whatever. Off you go. And those are the people they can't account for, those children. It's scary as hell that we were part of the biggest human smuggling operation to date, at least in the modern West, and really created genocidal conditions just to get to that point. And then what hellscape can you imagine is on the other side of that? Because that's not innocent, I'm afraid. It's so hard for young families to adopt a child in the U.S. adoption process. Yet you could just go down there and get some poor, El Salvadorian girl and whatever. And we just turn a blind eye to it. It's crazy. In my former career, hiding in plain sight is the best camouflage. And so they used our immigration history against us, and they just turned the volume up in ways that we've never seen before, and flooded the zone and completely changed the policy. Really used the federals to bring them in as fast as they could, catch and release. It was like a Bass Pro fishing tournament. They're trying to things they could in, and that fits for some people in power who want more of what South Texas has been for 110 years. That's a reliable voting plantation. They just throw out some scraps for you, as long as you show up on voting day. Here's your compensation for that. Then we're fine. And what you do is you demoralize a population. You don't represent a population, and you've got people there that aren't putting into the system that are totally benefiting from it also. And so this has been a corrosive problem for so long that really is totally opposite of the South Texas population. The South Texas population, left alone for bad government, hardworking, family-loving, church-attending, serving, public serving thing that it's like it truly is our greatest immigration story. The U.S. Hispanic population that immigrated here in the first, second, whatever, fifth generations, because retained values and because it's so large and because of all of that. Once we, South Texas, convinced the rest of the nation that, hey, yeah, we voted for Trump, and now we're going to vote for the rest of our guys that match our values. We're going to run this thing. We're going to ensure our future, because you get the government give. And when people check out every 2 years or every 4 years, only vote in the presidential, well, then they can't be upset with the results. And like I said in the football analogy in opening, Trump's only caught the football on kickoff. We've got to get him over because he's just doing executive orders. We have to have enough people, conservative lawmakers up there, to put into law the things he's doing. And you saw the bill passed last week, one vote. So that means we couldn't get a lot of stuff we needed in there as God-fearing, family-loving, patriotic South Texans. There were some left out. And so we hope to put more in it. And thank God they passed it. We have 17 months until the midterms. So that is not a lot of time to make things permanent. We're just going to turn this thing over on down. We're going to give the ball back to the Democrats, and we're then going to go ahead and run off that cliff.
Here's something that I look at everybody, and everybody says, Webb County turned red. Okay, no, they voted for Trump.
Right.
They voted for Trump because it was the same numbers basically that voted in the primary and the general. Basically, it's the same number.
But what? Yeah. Well, the same reported numbers, Paul. I have to caveat.
So what happens is that in the general, everybody votes on the Democrats. Why? Because the vast majority of people that vote and early vote work for municipality or work for the county. So they have to maintain their position or maintain for them not to get blackballed and so on and so forth. And then the same people vote again in November, and all of a sudden Trump wins. Understand what I'm saying? It's not exactly. It's not that more Republicans voted. It's just the fact that more people voted for an individual. And that to me has always been, why can't we all have a ballot where both Democrats and Republicans can vote on it at the same time? Because here they'll tell you, who are you voting for? Oh, Democrat Party, and the Democrat ballot. Who are you voting for? The Republican Party, and they have to give you just one ballot, and you go vote for whoever you want.
Right. It's the open primary system's a problem, though. I think that the problem is that you can stack the vote, so you can flood the zone and you can go vote for the other side, and it's not an honest vote. It's gaming the system. The Texas open primary system, is fraught with problems. So look, at the end of the day, I want law and order. I want to be able to make money to feed my family. So just opportunities. I don't need handouts. And I want free and fair elections. And I want to be left alone by government. Really, I want to be left alone so that I can make the best decisions for my kids and what suits us. When you have crooks at the top, they then start making all those decisions for you, and it's not in your favor ever.
No, you're correct, and it's just like what happened. This session already ended here in Texas. Now we're going to Texas, and not one Republican, except only one, Representative Harrison, and might be a couple of others, were fighting for removal of property taxes. Not one other Republican fought for it. Crazy. And you're like, you're crazy with a $29 billion surplus. Now that's just the macro. Well, let's take Texas as a macro. And how are each one of our city council and commissioners and so on and so forth going to do? They're doing the same thing.
They are.
When we the people, and we're not subjects.
Amen, brother. But people would need to. We're kind of getting conditioned like that, though. You're right. We're all free agents. We all have, inalienable rights. We all have freedom of expression. We're sovereign people, and I think people need to understand we don't live under a king, and we live as a represented body, and so we are the sovereign. And people forget that. That's unique. Our form of democracy, or our republic, is the people wear the funny hats like kings, by analogy. So I think you're right. If we, the problem is we've given too much money and power to all of those entities, right? So we have let them come in and add regulations that make us all poorer, weaker, and less competitive. Why? Because people next to those people with money and power, the governing class, can then push the money till in their direction and out their competitors. That's what happens in DC. That's what happens in Austin. That's what happens in Laredo. And so we have to deregulate. Then that pops the bubble and takes the money away from the system. And then the money has to actually go and like do business and compete. Let's actually have a free market. That'd be the best for all of us. That way there'd be a bigger piece of pie for us all to eat off of, instead of trying to slice, a bigger piece for each of us. The same thing, really breaking the pie in that effort. But if we have true competition, then we're the most innovative. We're the most productive. That is why America is the economic miracle of the world. And these last 70 years that we have been that, we've risen the watermark for the world over. More people have come out of poverty in the last 70 years than anywhere else, and more people are healthier than they have been because of those outcomes than any other time in history. And that's just a watershed of America being competitive. But now we're acting like all republics do, and as in our success, the generations that have enjoyed the success, are subject to capture, are subject to apathy. It's human nature. But if we pull the teeth out of the government, federal government, they should only be doing three things constitutionally. No one knows this. They should only be doing defense, foreign affairs, and interstate commerce. In other words, some rules of the road between the different sovereign states, of which we have 50 of. And let's let competition win the day, and the best man or woman win, as opposed to changing the rules of game for people that don't have ethics and values. So I really believe that South Texas, with our just innate goodness, because why we're so grounded in those things, can, once we're led on the scene, once we realize our vote matters, and it matters for our children, not just to keep voting like our abuelas, and that we really, I think we've been given permission to vote for Republicans now that we've voted for Trump. I think that's okay. We're foot in the door, and we need to realize that we've been lied to for a very, very long time. I mentioned LBJ earlier. The Duke of Duval, Box 13, the 80 or so votes that he fraudulently won that election, and then was sent to the Senate. That was his first Senate run, and 15 years later, we have a dead president. And they're saying that OBJ might be involved. I don't know. I'm not going to spin conspiracy theories, but I'm saying elections have consequences. And we can be a force for good as South Texans, or we can be a force for bad. If we don't show up, we're a force for bad. All it takes for evil to exist is for good men and women to do nothing and just let it be. But God wants us on the battlefield, engaged in a righteous fight for His people, and so that's where I come from. That's why I do it. That's why I led my whole career that way. And now I've come home and like, oh my goodness, this border looks like the worst I've served on. I better get involved, because I know none of us, no matter what the politics are, want the next thing, and we have to have the economy to pay for it. So those things always go together: economy and security, hand in hand. It's never not the case. It's always been the reason we are a secure nation. And so we have to turn up the dial in Puerto Laredo. We have to turn up the dial on the extra bridges coming in. We have to bring back the water. We have to do things like agriculture again. We have to unleash the natural gas and the oil that's there, part of our heritage. We have to, this land stealing thing's got to stop. We have to, look down the river. Look at what Elon's doing down there. He saw opportunity, and all of that potential there, and he's applied, match to fuel, and they're doing amazing things. We could do that here. We could have our own Elons come out of here. We've got San Antonio as a resource. We need to be connecting Laredo, San Antonio, Rio, Zapata, all of it, and just turn the engines on full. Why? Because we have a great partner in Mexico whenever they behave, and we run a good border. Guest worker program or whatever. We need to keep on doing what's made Texas successful. Immigration is the secret sauce of our country, but look, if it's just kind of a sleepy day at the guardrail, then it can't be. And so we have to be vigilant because we know people want to take what we have, and we are successful for a reason. And so yeah, that's why I'm here. And we're gonna after this election challenge, we're still challenging it. We're gonna run again, and we are convinced that this is the moment when South Texans will answer the call of their country and be the Alamo for the nation. With the buck stop here, here's the line in the sand.
Now here's a question. You're running when's the election is March, correct?
It is.
Next year.
It's the first Tuesday in March 26. That's right.
You're running on the Republican ticket, correct?
That's correct.
Is there other people running on the same ticket now that have voiced up their names, or?
Right. Only one is, well, I think two have announced now. Myra Flores has announced, and then Raul Espinoza has announced, I believe. I know the gentleman. And so that's all I know in the field as of today. Of course, I haven't logged on to see if there's any others this morning. But yeah, so no one thought it was possible, and then we showed them it was this last time. And so it's going to be a more crowded field. We're very confident that all the good work and investment we put into it last time will be multiplied this time. And so we're here. We never left. So we're here faithfully, continuing to finish the job.
Well, what are some things that you can say by you being part of doing the security work that you did in the Texas National Guard? How can you help the security now and try to build it up? How would you say it's lacking?
Yes, sir. So great. Thanks for that. We hear Pablo Escobar back in the 90s, right? We did that through an interagency effort led by the Texas Rangers. Even the U.S. Army came in underneath them, command and control wise, with their assets, and we had a whole of government attack on the drug war of the 90s, and I would say we won the war for the frontera in that moment. Now, since then, the cartel has been empowered by all of our enemies, all of U.S. enemies, principally China, and Mexico has fallen into the Mexico none of us recognize anymore. And so all of that's being used against us. So what do we have to do? We have to put pressure on Mexico to do what they did in the first early days of this administration, and that is to deploy their own troops and to tamp them down and hold them accountable for the onslaught onto our borders. They need to send their Marines south and block it off the southern approaches of Mexico. And we need to help them do that with advise and assist and put people in that can connect the whole problem set, because it's one problem set, from the Darien Gap up. And so we have to, we're really the only people that can, span that distance of command and control. We have the capability, the assets, and the understanding for all of those countries. And so come along. And additionally, I like what the president's doing with sending people to the southern active duty military to our southern border. More of that. He's got 2 right now, national defense zones that they've locked down. They're using those troops at. I think we can make a great case that in this invasion, and it truly is an invasion, that not only the Alien Enemies Act, but he has designated cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. So he has declared war on the cartels within our country, or the ones trying to assault us outside our country, and he hasn't stopped just at our border. So in that war declaration, he actually has the War Powers Act. And so the president can walk right through anything trying to stop him, because his principal job as commander-in-chief is to stop a foreign invasion. There's nothing more sacred for a U.S. president to do, and more important that he does, and he needs to be left alone to do it. Eventually get Congress in there to support that declaration of war. But in this moment right now, he can run these guys to the hills, and he should. He should also be smart about it. He's extremely smart, but we should, as a nation, use some savvy here and let the people help us with problem that they presented. Now, I don't blame anybody for coming here looking for a new life and an opportunity for their families. They were, quite frankly, lied to by the Biden administration, by the U.S. government representing us. And so we lied to them, the administration on our behalf, and said, come on, it's fine. Sign up for this if you want that. You know, you can do this. Get on an airplane, get on a boat, whatever. And so we need to have a moment where we say, look, full stop. We messed up as a nation. We let this happen. We didn't hold our elected leaders accountable to the extent that we should. We gave them power so they could ignore us. And we're sorry, Biden's illegals, but we've got a really big problem here. You know, because none of the bad guys are going to tell us who they are, we're going to have to ask that you go. But if you cooperate with us in, say, the next 6 months, and you go to a self-deportation center and you go and you take the money that we give you on your way out and you take our free plane ride back to your country, or a third country that's safe if yours is not, we'll start this over again. And if you cooperate, we will give you head of line privileges. Because why? You just told us you want to be a law-abiding American. You want to come and do this correctly, and that's who we want. But we have to go over and we have to put the line outside the country again. Unfortunately, it's simply a security management problem. It's like dojo, and they bum rush you and a bunch of people in there. You know, you got to push them all out in order to secure the place, because you don't know which ones are the bad, which ones are the good, all right, before they start doing some damage. And they will. I agree with you, Paul. And so, you know, look, that's step one. And then after that 6 months or that moratorium that you gave the carrot version of my plan Alamo, you bring the stick version. You message the whole way through. You said, hey, you got 6 months for the carrot, but in 6 months, the stick is coming. And if you have not gotten in the queue or a line at a self-deportation center in 6 whole months to get out of this country and to restart this process, and we're going to make it painful on the way out the door. You're going to get stuck at Gitmo or Alcatraz or whatever. You're going to have a record, and it's not 3 strikes and you're out. You're out forever. You're put on the banned list from that one moment forward. We do that. This problem, we can move through this problem in, I think, 12 months. If we help out.
The problem has been an issue that's been around, I would say, probably for the last 40 years, but probably longer, but 40 years as per se, right? Because it's been a can that's been kicked down.
Yeah.
We're no, you know, we've had several programs that were working, like the Braceros program, that they can come in and work, and we can account for them, and they'll go back for 30 days or 90 days or whatever it was, come back again, work. We need those. We need those vocations. We need them.
100%.
You can't say no, we don't. We need them. And I remember back when I was in culinary school, I remember we were doing an apprenticeship, and we were working, and all of a sudden the Border Patrol came in there, and they took everybody except me and another guy that we were both in school, and we looked at each other, and everybody else was taken away, and the chef comes out and where's everybody? Everybody was deported. They were taken away by Border Patrol. Border Patrol did a raid in all the restaurants in Dallas. And all of a sudden, they spoke, you know, the restaurant associations, and everybody spoke with everybody because they had no workers, period. You know, might have been a great idea. So they stopped. So it only lasted a couple of days. Those that got deported, you know, 6 years later, you saw them back in. Oh, we just got back into the country. And it was something that, yes, I understand that they're immigrating they want to be part of America, which is the greatest country there is. We know that. And they want to be part of this American dream. Anybody can. You know, we accept everybody. We accept every immigrant doing it legally to come in. But what happens is everybody's taking advantage to that. And when they allowed that, nobody was being vetted. And that's the danger we have. And that's the danger we have now. And we're going to see that. We're going to see those clashes. It's just a matter of time. It's happening already. It's going to get worse. And so people need to understand that. Our police need to be vigilant on it. and our law enforcement and everybody else, because that is coming. We declared war on the cartels. The cartels declare. I mean, they're gonna say okay, and they're gonna fight it out. And yes, we might end up winning, but we haven't seen what they do in Mexico, and they're very violent. When they pick somebody up, they take away your kid from this judge who was supposed to do this or what have you, and they do mass kidnappings, and all of a sudden you start seeing missing people. That's going to happen here.
Yep. No, I agree.
It's going to those horrific events are going to happen here in the United States. It's going to start, and how are we going to stop that? So we have to be very careful on everything that's going in, and we have some brilliant minds in our government that we have in there, but we have to understand that residual effects of violence we're going to see that pop up a lot more, and I don't think Americans are ready for that.
No, probably not. And unfortunately, though, we can fight it now when it's a small weed in the sidewalk, or we can fight a full blown brush fire on it once it metastasizes, and it's ready to. They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. There are cells in every city, as you said. They're organized. They are vicious, and it makes the Italian mob look like just tame mice. So.
And they had I remember seeing some stories and some of people that were around when Gotti was in power, and how they just showed up to a park and they said, okay, you guys, and these couple of Italian guys ended up getting out of the Cadillac and beat up a couple of drug dealers and said nobody deals drugs in these neighborhoods. And all the kids were the ones that ended up being in the mob later in the 80s. In the 2000s, and we didn't sell drugs to kids. We never sold drugs to you know what I'm saying? So they had that respect, at least towards the community, and here they don't have. The people that have come in the last couple of decades, they do not have that respect.
Zero respect. You can't trust. It's a totally different person that's coming over. One, because we give them handouts when they arrive. It's the messaging that Biden gave them on the way here. But also because you're not screening anybody coming through, they're coming through so fast. The worst are coming. Of course. Why would it's like a kid in a candy store in America. Our safety understanding is a 911 protocol. So, most people have just between them and the street out front of their home, a curb, a lawn, maybe a chain link fence. Okay. But it's very few people, and you get more of it on the border actually, but still there's very few people that live like you have to live south of the border. High walls, embedded glass at the top, armed security if you something to protect, like your family. And so here we think we can call somebody, they'll be there. There's so many people here, Paul. 20 million is my number. I mean, because we don't know, and it's somewhere between 10 and 20 million, and maybe even north of that. Whatever it is, that's like the size of our military, and the next 10 added to it in troop strength. So it's incredibly overwhelming odds, especially if we're not helping with this problem at the state and local level, which we're not. And so we need to get over this political moment, quit trying to politicize it in Austin and DC, and the people need to hold their electeds accountable like we did in November and say, enough, fix this problem now. We don't want to ever have to deal with it again. We're not kicking this can down the road, as you said. And that goes for our fiscal house too. So we have to do this now or never, truly or never. So we're going to, I don't know if anybody's paying attention what's happening in Europe. Europe has lost its soul culturally, completely almost. There are let's take the UK, not Europe, but the UK is approximate. They Brexit themselves, but the UK is a starking example of what's happening of Islamization of the country. 40 of the mayors in England are Muslim, including London. 40. This is a self-professed Christian nation. France is the same way. Yeah, Germany is overrun, and I'm not being religiously bigoted here. We have to take our off. We have to take our lenses off and understand that not everybody has a truly charitable heart like we do in South Texas and helping people. We're not talking about the Catholic Church. We're not talking about the evangelical church. We're talking about a religion that has a long game in order to occupy and then convert, and if they have to, by force. And so they did that back in the Moorish invasion to Europe, and the Spanish Inquisition was the result, and that was a bloody exile. But they've done it again to Europe. And so these populations, if you follow the story in Texas, this is coming close to home. Of the epic community north Texas, north in Frisco. So they'll come into a population and they'll start to try to change the law, and it's called Sharia. They're doing it here now. So if your listeners need to Google epic community Texas, and the governor's doing a really good job on trying to stymie them. But they've come in, they've got a massive planned community only for the converted. And at the center of it is this massive mosque, and people say, well, that's freedom of religion. Yeah, but they use that against us. Well, yes, they're exercising freedom of religion, but they're also wanting to usurp our laws and doing so in the name of religion. And then what they do is it grows like a cancer. Again, just look at Europe. They've lost their country, and I have a lot of Muslim friends, and we argue about this all the time. But it is not compatible with Western democracy. It is not compatible with our freedoms that we enjoy. It's not compatible with women's rights. So we're different cultures. We need to embrace our own, not apologize for it. And that's why I love Texas 28, because Texas 28, I think, find a nation through the rest of Pax America Hispaniola, if you will. But then also, it'll be such a movement in the right direction. People will follow our population and the rest of the God-fearing, family tradition, patriotic population. Because why? It works. It works. God's design works. And so we'll win them with our success. And I really think that we're going to plant the flag here in South Texas. I said earlier, the Alamo, people have made that politicized. It's truly a story of Tejanos and Texians coming together to fight off a colonial power. It's a beautiful story of kind of where we're at right now. And so Texas 28 houses the Alamo. And so symbolically, it's also important that Texas 28 pick up the mantle this moment, be active right now, or they're going to steal it from us, all the people that have the money and the power. They're going to take it yet again. And, some people's hand are just prevalently stuck in the cookie jar. And if you grow up in the cookie jar, you can't be expected to help yourself or anybody save this land for us.
Here's a question that I'm going to throw out there. It always boils down to every so often people not, term limits.
Yep.
The professional politician, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Why don't we have term limits in Congress and in?
Because why not? Yep. That might tell us everything we need to know. That might tell us that there's too much money up there for guys and gals that hang around. You can't tell me that Nancy Pelosi, who shows up with no money and now is worth $120 million on a public servant salary. Come on. I mean, and she's just one example of 80%. And so it's sad. Those 2 tours I had in DC while in the Navy, interacting with all the folks, I truly came away with the impression is anecdotal. It was just Jay's impression, but really that most of the politicians were feeding out of the same trough. And I got really upset by it because I'm filling that trough. And so, I think it's true. Term limits are something we need to happen. And I'm glad you brought it up because in addition to deregulation, you have to have the numbers to do that. So we have to have enough people to vote in term limits so you don't term limit yourself out of it. But first, before we do all that, we have to take the money and power out of DC. We have to put it back down into the states, and then the states need to put it back down to the county. So it's a very simple governing concept in my mind. So the further distance between you and your money to solve problems that you have, the worst solution you're going to get, and the least amount you're going to have back trying to fix the problem. So we keep the solutions deployed close to the problems. Well, we can adjust fire more appropriately. We can spend it just right. And we know if Jorge or Johnny is trying to get over on us, he's my neighbor, and I know he's trying to screw the system. All right, so let's have some accountability, local government accountability, and let's keep what's ours here and send away only what's necessary. Big sweeping programs are never the answer. I believe in men and women to know what's best for their family, by and large. All right, and again, Texas has the same kind of set of mandates as the federal government, but more. So more as a republic, the United States is not a democracy. As a constitutional republic, Austin should be doing most of what DC is doing for us, truly, and should be, and would be doing a much better job despite our differences. But at least that's a closer fight. At least to try, Paul, you and I to go up and advocate in Austin is a lot easier than going down to DC and fight. And then the fight that needs to happen there is they try to put as much down at the local level as possible, I believe. So, but at least we can have that conversation with our neighbors. I think that's the whole thing.
Here's something that needs to be brought up. Right after we're going back into the pandemic and bring forward. During the pandemic, small lost the nation, period. But here in South Texas, here in Laredo, a lot of them closed down. Yeah. And the help was brought in, but it wasn't funneled out. It was given to the city. Here's the money, use it, and all of a sudden,
yeah.
Say I still to this day have not met a small businessman that got help from the city with that money that came in. But nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? So we need to protect our small businesses throughout. How, if you, let's say, get elected next year, how would you help small businesses grow?
I'm reminded, it's a great question. I'm reminded by a quote from a famous Republican, Ronald Reagan. He said, I love this. He said, "Hi, I'm from the federal government. I'm here to help." He said, "What are the scariest words you'll ever hear? Hi, I'm from the federal government. I'm here to help." And so it's true. It's true. And that's that distant money problem. It's easier to steal it from you. I can tell you when I operated overseas, a lot of that money goes away and disappears and is laundered. It's absolutely obscene, and it needs to stop immediately. So small businesses, were crushed. Well, let's look at how and why they were crushed. It was federal and state and local. They shut down businesses, but some were allowed to stay open. Tell me, Paul, why is the COVID virus less supposedly deadly in Home Depot than it is in mom and pop's, hardware shop? Seriously. So what actually happened in COVID? And COVID was what we've been talking about on steroids and accelerated. And so in that 2 years period, it was the biggest wealth transfer that's ever happened in this country. We minted 50% more billionaires during COVID than we had before that. So it was basically shuttering all the small business, using regulation in a very gross and egregious way to then support the guys paying the lobbyists. And that's the big businesses. That happened at the local level, that happened at the state level, that happened at the federal level. That is the exact that we have to tame. That's why I'm throwing my hat in this crazy business to try to slash through it. I stood up against the Pentagon, the most powerful organization in the world, the most lethal the COVID vaccine mandate. This issue you just brought up is a perfect example of what can happen when we let our government get away from it. We, the people, drop the ball. And we don't demand and force our way into the conversation and get results. And we have to be active. Our fellow founders were wise, and they created the best country in the world. That only survives generation to generation. And Franklin told us that we have to be an involved and informed people to keep the government they gave us. If we aren't, then we can check out, right? And it's managed decline. And I can tell you, all of our enemies across the world would love for that to happen. And they're kind of united against us. And so, unless we unite as a people, we're not going to be able to stem their attacks through the border, on the dollar, on our children. And all three of those are fronts. The last one is meant to distract us. The mainline attacks on the economy and the kinetic attack through the border. So the small business, how am I going to help? Let me finish. Actually, answer your question. I'm sorry. So we have to deregulate people that took advantage of PPP. We have to find them and get rid of them and claw that money back. And then we have to do everything we can to encourage small business. Reduce the entry time period to start one. Have incubators private incubators there, and sort of culture that can happen. Every kid wants to be an influencer now. All right, so let's use that. Let's not wonder what it is. There's a lot of good skills in being an influencer.
Absolutely.
And I think that we need to inspire. We need to get out of the way and let our young people be the brilliant people they are, and support them where we can, so they can take us, drag our carcasses into the next economy, and I think good things will happen.
No, you're correct. And Derek, I like that quote when you said about Franklin, and Franklin said another quote that resonates right now, and it was resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. And that's what we have to be right now. We have to stand up, and we can't be forced into that again. And like many people were bullied into submission, and unfortunately, some people stood up, and those that stood up made it. But we have to stop that government. And I think right now, term limits is a must. Period. I think everybody should be singing that tune. And it should be straight across the board, whether, I look at city council here, and you see people go inside, and then they want to stay another term. There's only 2 terms. But if you can't figure out where your speed bumps are, where you need speed bumps and fire hydrants and street lights, and you don't need another term.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think you only your shot is 4 years. Let's get somebody else in there to change.
Yep.
No,
I agree with you. We have an elitism problem.
But that's what it's about. That's the way I look at it. So now let's let's go back into the campaign. When's the
I got some of that. So the filing deadline's in November, and then the primary is March, of course. Then the general is November, scheduled. There's an opportunity here with this race that looks pretty interesting. That is the legal trouble that the Cuellars are in right now. They are currently indicted by the DOJ, Justice. That's not insignificant. The DOJ this is a true number, the DOJ has a 98% conviction rate. When they indict, they convict and charge 98% of the people they do that. So Senator Bob Menendez is a good example. Had similar charges and was convicted for it. Got 10 years. And so all that is to say is that we could have a special election before those dates we just mentioned. When that is, nobody knows. But it is an opportunity to add votes in Congress that reflect our values sooner than the midterms, which could be critical for the president right now to get his congressional agenda through. America First agenda, and everybody needs to get in the wedge up the middle so he can get over the goal line on that.
Who else have you heard that's run?
Just Myra, and just I think this Espinoza gentleman also. I've never met him, but I hear it's official. I haven't looked it up, so I can't verify that for you. So just that on the Republican side. I don't know anybody on the Dem yet. I think we're going to get another crazy one down here running, and so that'll be interesting. We're shifting hard, right? So it'll be the fight will be in the primary, in the Republican primary.
Absolutely. And you're going to face off in the Republican primary.
That's
Who
right.
from there? Look at those three. There's you three that have signed up. How do you see that going? How do you?
I can't hear you. Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
How do you see the victor coming out on the primary? It's you, Myra, and Mr. Espinoza.
Yeah. No, so my name recognition, the fact that I have not dropped my shield for over, we're rounding the corner here on a year and a half. This entire time we've been going, I think that we have a natural match. What's interesting, really, and I'll only do this as long as I feel inspired by the Lord, and we still, are, and it's amazing the dividend he's provided. As said earlier, I signed up on the last day you could. I was a reluctant candidate, understanding this is what is a central thing needs to be done. But nobody, what we do to our political candidates is it's cruel, and we should put them under professional scrutiny. But it's a pretty nasty business. Just look at the president and how many lawsuits he had, and how his family is defamed. It's terrible, and shot at him twice, or shot him once, tried a second time. So it's a tough road. Nobody, in their right mind would want to do this beyond, term limited 2 terms. I mean, I think that's our best outcome. But so we're still in the fight is the thesis, and I came in last days with very little money, never run a political. Wasn't brought up in a political machine. I'm a naval officer. I see problems. I go fix problems. And here too, we just ran into the problem, and we've learned a lot on the way. And really, it was toward the end, our professional, really understanding, and how we do things. We tried some things and they didn't work. Then we tried others. And then we started, then getting our stride right at the end of the campaign. Well, we haven't slowed up, and so now from the beginning of this campaign, we're still at stride, and we're leaning into it and speeding up because we don't have time. And my kids and your kids and all of our futures are entwined at this moment. And so South Texas can be that decisive. If the big, beautiful bill passed by one vote, that demonstrates how important one vote is. So, and it's amazing, but that's such a thin majority we have in the House, how incredibly important each vote is for the president's agenda.
Yep, you're correct. You're correct on that. And we're talking about when you go in, how will you be able to, with all your experience, be able to bring back manufacturing jobs to this area of South Texas?
Yeah, 100%. Security always comes first. We protect our families before we even feed them. So we have to have a safe and secure place to attract talent, retain talent, to operate business. We have a competitive advantage over Mexico. This is where the cartels, have their families live, or at least the lieutenants, because it's safe for now. And but it's not, the Mexican level of safe is not our level of safe, and so we need security for that manufacturing base. We also need a corrupt-free environment. So our current political machine of Webb County it doesn't allow competition like it should. There's no reason why the resources and all of the other structures around Laredo should be controlled and permitted by one machine. You shouldn't live in fear of having your business license taken away from you because you have a political dissenting view. And you shouldn't have to, beg to build your business because somebody controls that racket, and they do. The current head of the political machine, the Cuellar's, right now, you run this thing like a mafia boss, and that's not just Laredo. And it's unfortunate that's the case. So, and people know that greater machine, they don't want to cross it. That's why it was so significant for hundreds of people to go on record and swear by affidavit and penalty of perjury that I was not on their ballot in November. They were brave in doing that. They were saying, I don't care. I cannot let this go on any longer. This buck will not go past me. And they stood up and they did the right thing. And it takes just one to do that. And you feel alone at first when you do it, but you're a public activist. You very often will say, "Hey, no, this isn't right, and this is why, and let's have this discussion." And then you go and action that with trying to influence outcomes. And that's how it should be done. We need new manufacturing base, but we can't. It's a chicken or egg. We have to have security first. Security is paid for by economy. It's the economy we want, but we need the security to get it, but we got to pay for it. So I think we're going to need more help from the feds to secure our most important port in the country. I think from that, once we do that, there will be more of a watershed, a manufacturing base around it. I think we need to stamp out. The public needs to say no more, get involved like they're doing with city council. And say no more at the county level. Are we going to have any more corruption? We will never accept any more fraudulent elections. Why? Because you're stealing our most precious thing that protects our free speech, protects our gun rights, protects our families, and our freedom from illegal search and seizure is the vote.
Yeah, you said a couple of things, and I'm gonna. It is run like a mom mentality here. It is a mom mentality here. I don't think they're the ones that the Cuellos are the ones that head it, though. I think it's others that are here. They're not there. They're just public officials.
I'm aware of some of the other characters. I'm just but he's definitely.
It's not them. I can assure you that one. But that it's a mom mentality here, yes, and it's more. What I've seen through the experiences that I've been here, it's people that are inside the departments that run the city that control it in that sense.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And they're the ones that have been there 20, 25, 40 years. Even though these people are public officials, they're the ones that actually control it.
Yeah. Well, they're organized. They're organized.
When you have a restaurant here, for example, that puts a political sign outside of so-and-so, and all of a sudden you get food inspectors that come in there, and all of a sudden now you have a stack this big of citations, and they'll tell you straightforward. I think it's more than that. I think like we say in the DC, you have that swamp. Here we have a cesspool.
Yeah.
And the cesspool has been like that all the way through. And I think in the other counties that you've been through, does it resonate corruption as well? Does Bexar County?
Sure. Duval had its historic corruption. And look, poor Duval, the development there is a terrible outcome. Like the condition of the infrastructure in Duval is a tragedy and needs a change. Because why? They have a revenue base of massive oil wealth and hunting revenue. So like every place, everybody's made poor with the corruption. It is everywhere. It's true, but we shouldn't just be tolerant of it. I can tell you. Corruption is going to get in the way of bringing in new business. No business wants to operate in a crony capitalist environment. does not bring innovation. That does not, generate a startup culture. That does not, keep engineers here, as you're saying they're not. So I think it's incredible. So security, root out the corruption, and then deregulate. Let's remove the barriers of entry into doing business. Why does it take as long as it does to start a business? It shouldn't. And so we need to help people by giving them a fair playing field to operate on. And then truly, I think we all need to get together and work on the big issues in South Texas that would help all of us profit. If we had more water, we'd have more business. If we had more medical care, we'd have more business. If we also inspired our youth to stay, we'd have regenerating employment base. And so we have to address them as well.
I think this goes back to the points that we've been talking earlier about, and that means term limits. I'm still with that. I think
I got you.
I
agree. Perfect idea. There's a lot of tripwires.
Yep.
I signed the thing, but I mean, we just need to be wise so it's not flipped against us and judo, flipping using our body weight. So.
No, yeah, absolutely. They did it to the president. We have to do it all across the board.
100%. I'm excited. Look, South Texas is going to lead the way for the nation. We are, and it haven't happened yet, but I think people get a sense of it. And we are at a precipice here. They pull it back from the clutches from the most dangerous border and pull it away from somebody who voted 95% with the Biden administration. Cuellar has a 95 voting record with the Biden administration. So he is what we call in the Navy, a plank owner of our bad border and a plank owner of our terrible inflated economy that we're trying to get back, claw back. And then he also voted for all that cultural stupidity, whether it be trans rights or whatever, attacking the traditional family. It's time to go. The National Democrat Party has left the building. They no longer represent anything that looks like anybody that I know in South Texas. And it's important that we do that right now. We can be the buoy that shifts because people follow Texans. You know this, Paul, everywhere you go in the world, I'm sure you say, I'm from Texas. I'm not from America. I'm from Texas. And Texans, lead Americans as well. The rest of the country is, rightly pays attention to what we do. Why? Because we're the 8th biggest economy in the world. Texas. So once South Texans pick up the mantle, pick up the guidon, and start leading the way to the right to support the president's agenda and locking that in, maybe sooner with a special election with this office, then we are going to put everyone else on notice. And I think from Miami to Southern California, the big Hispanic populations are going to be like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to shift over there too. This is okay because we're going to do this as a family. And Mi Familia, is going to, I think, save the country because I don't think God's done with this, Paul. I don't think God is done with this. There's so much providence here, and there's so much work yet to be done that America can do good around the world. We just have to take care of ourselves first and stand up for ourselves, not be pushed around. So yeah, and our enemies will knock us off every time. Russia's, China's, unless we do take care of ourselves and make ourselves strong and together. We have to do that together. We're our own worst enemy sometimes because we just feel like this whole thing's just going to continue on autopilot. Well, autopilot is what just happened this last November, or got us to the point of like having a 4-year administration that was un-American, and I'll just say it, treacherous even with their policies. And so that's what happens when we go on autopilot and we're fooled. I don't think anybody's fooled anymore. The pandemic actually is a blessing in disguise because we started looking at what our kids are learning in school, and we started, and then we had X to come and like put some truth bombs into the place and actually have the public forum and the podcast. Thank God for you guys. The podcasts are truly the town center again, and we can have that town square discussion and debate. And people are getting the news from alternative, true, legitimate sources that are not some manufactured news thing that is connected to business.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Podcasts have changed and made this election happen.
Yeah, I agree. They did. It's provable.
Podcasters out there, this election wouldn't be where it's at. I'm with you. Because the media is one-sided, and it's I don't believe anything they say.
Yeah, largely owned. A lot of it's owned by China. A lot of it's owned by the same 7 families. That's corruption, and that's what you get. So what corruption needs is oxygen. In other words, we need to all know about it and to get involved in the issues, and then make choices, consumer choices and voting choices based on that oxygen, that informed voter and citizen and business person and employee. So it's all of us. Everybody's vote is equal, and the enemy always gets a vote, and we help them win when we say, well, what I do doesn't matter. They're going to cheat and win anyways. I can't do anything. It has no impact. No, that's a lie the enemy wants you to believe. You are the most important vote in the entire country. You are. And you have to give that most precious thing you have as a citizen of this country, and give it to your children and say, look, you guard this. I'm passing this on to you. Be a good example for them to do it. And if you've never voted before, go do it. Quit complaining. It has real consequences. I mean, we saw how we could buy less bread. I mean, eggs would cost what? So they're down about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to thank you for coming out. I want to thank you for your enthusiasm. And once more, thanks for signing on that dotted line, because it's courageous work to do so.
Well, it's a little bullheaded, but we're going to do it anyways. And we're committed. I tell you, politics is terrible, but I love people. So, this has been fantastic. And just, yeah. And for that, that motivates me to continue. And I'm going to invert this elitist model. So I'm Jay in front of leadership. I'm Jay in front of the donor class. I'm Jay in front of the voter class. And I want to be accessible. Something we did in the primary last time, I had a town hall for an hour every night. I just logged on. I said, whoever wants to log on. I didn't have very many takers. I said, hey, ask me anything. Let's do this. I work for all 777,000 of you. Come on, let's, put me through my paces. Let's talk about some issues. What do you think? And I'm a conduit for that. I'm a facilitator of what's important to folks, and make sure our values are represented. So I hope to continue doing that. Thank you for podcasts that allow that reach. And it's not me. It's, again, the most important person besides our Lord Jesus Christ is you. And you need to believe that your vote, it matters the most.
Absolutely. You stay safe. And I'm going to leave everybody with this. This is Memorial Weekend. Look at that red, white, and blue. Give thanks to the men and women that gave their lives for our freedoms and for our rights. And once more, this is the greatest country in the world, period, bar none at this point in time. And let's keep it that way. And I want to thank you and everybody else watching. And we'll leave you with this. You all stay safe, be safe, and God bless you all. Until next time. Peace.
Thank you. So
when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.